Let me ask you something right now, and I want you to be honest with yourself, because the only person you can truly lie to and get away with it, for a little while at least, is yourself. Are you happy? Not are you comfortable? Not are you making money? Not are you keeping up with the people around you? I'm asking you something deeper than that. Are you genuinely, authentically so deep happy with the life you are living right now? Because if you're not, if there is something inside of you that feels hollow, something that wakes you up at 3 in the morning with a restlessness you can't explain, something that makes you scroll through other people's lives wondering why yours doesn't feel the way it looks, then I need you to hear what I'm about to say. You might be chasing the wrong success. You heard me. You heard me, the wrong success. And that is not a small thing. That is not a minor miscalculation. That is a life-altering, soul-crushing, decade-stealing mistake that millions of people make every single day. And most of them never stop long enough to realize it until it's too late. We live in a world that has very specific ideas about what success looks like. It has a zip code. It has a car brand. It has a job title. It has a number in a bank account. It has a body type. It has a relationship status posted online for everyone to see. And from the time you were young, from the time you were sitting in a classroom, watching television, listening to what the adults around you said about who mattered and who didn't, you started absorbing a definition of success that was never yours to begin with. You inherited someone else's dream. You picked up someone else's measuring stick and started measuring your entire life against it. And then you wonder why you feel like you're constantly falling short. You're not falling short. You're measuring wrong. You're running someone else's race. And no matter how fast you run, no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you sacrifice, if you're in the wrong race, you cannot win. You were never supposed to win that race. That race was not designed for you. I want you to think about someone you know. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's someone close to you. Who did everything right? Everything society told them to do. They got the grades. They went to the college their parents were proud to tell people about at dinner parties. They got the degree. They got the degree. They got the job. They got the apartment, then the house, then the promotion, then the spouse, then the kids, then the second car, then the vacation photos on social media. And from the outside, from the perspective of every metric that the world uses to evaluate a human life, they succeeded. They won. But talk to them in private. Ask them when no one else is listening. Ask them at the end of a long day when they're sitting alone and the noise has quieted down and there's nothing to distract them from their own thoughts. Ask them if they feel fulfilled. Ask them if they would choose this again. Ask them if they feel like they are living their life or performing it, and watch their face. Watch what happens in their eyes. Because so many people who are succeeding by everyone else's definition are quietly devastated by how empty it all feels. That emptiness has a name. That emptiness is what happens when you achieve goals that were never connected to your purpose. That emptiness is the feedback your soul gives you when your daily actions are not aligned with your deepest values. That emptiness is not weakness. That emptiness is wisdom. It is your internal compass telling you that you have been navigating by the wrong map. And the tragedy is not that you ended up somewhere you didn't want to be. The tragedy is that you worked so incredibly hard to get there. You sacrificed sleep. You sacrificed relationship. You sacrificed years of your life pursuing something that when you finally grabbed it, felt like nothing in your hand. And now you have to decide what to do with that information, because some people get that feedback and they double down. They think the answer is more money, more status, more stuff, more followers, more achievements. They think if they can just get enough of the wrong thing, eventually it will start to feel right. It won't. More of the wrong thing is still the wrong thing. The whole inside you is not the shape of a bigger house or a better car. It is the shape of your unlived life. It is the shape of the version of you that you abandoned somewhere along the road to acceptable. Let me tell you something about purpose. Purpose is not some mystical, vague concept reserved for philosophers and motivational speakers. Purpose is practical. Purpose is the specific intersection where your unique gifts meet the genuine needs of the world. Purpose is what you would do if money was not the primary consideration. Purpose is the work that makes time disappear, where you look up and 3 hours have passed and it felt like 20 minutes. Purpose is what makes you feel useful, alive, connected to something larger than yourself. Purpose is the thing that, when you're doing it, you feel like you are finally being the fullest version of who you were designed to be. And here's the thing about purpose that most people don't understand. It is not always glamorous. It is not always prestigious. The world might not have a name for it that impresses people at dinner parties. Your parents might not immediately understand it. Your friends might raise their eyebrows. But when you are operating in your purpose, there's a consistency of energy, a consistency of motivation, a consistency of drive that you cannot manufacture through discipline alone. You will outwork everyone around you, not because you are more disciplined, but because you are more aligned. And alignment is the most powerful force in human performance. Think about the difference between a person who drags themselves to work every morning, counting down the minutes until the weekend, grinding through tasks they find meaningless, performing for a boss they don't respect, in a role that never asks for the best parts of who they are, and a person who wakes up genuinely excited about what they're about to do. Not every day. I'm not talking about some kind of artificial positivity where every morning is rainbows and inspiration. I'm talking about a fundamental orientation toward your work, a sense that what you do matters, a sense that who you are and what you do are in alignment. That second person will consistently, over time, outperform and outlast the first, regardless of raw talent, regardless of opportunity, regardless of intelligence, because motivation that comes from external rewards is fragile. It runs out. The race stops feeling exciting. The title stops feeling significant. The praise becomes background noise. But motivation that comes from genuine engagement with meaningful work, that is self-renewing. That replenishes itself. That is what people call passion. But I want to call it something more grounded. I want to call it alignment, because passion sounds like a feeling that comes and goes, and alignment sounds like a structural decision, a way of building your life, which is what it actually is. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, that sounds good, but I have bills. I have a family. I have responsibilities. I can't just walk away from my job and go chase some dream. And I want to be very clear with you. I am not telling you to be irresponsible. I am not telling you to be reckless. I am not telling you to blow up your life tomorrow in the name of finding yourself. What I'm telling you is that you need to stop using your responsibilities as a permanent excuse to never investigate what your life could actually be. What I'm telling you is that there is a difference between a temporary season of doing what you have to do and a permanent lifestyle of refusing to even ask what you were made to do. Too many people use the logic of responsibility to silence the voice inside them that knows there is something more, and they call it maturity. They call it being realistic. They call it being an adult. But let me tell you something. Running from the fullest version of yourself is not maturity. It is fear. It is fear dressed up in practical language. And you will spend the next 20 years of your life being very responsible, very realistic, very adult, and very unfulfilled. Here's a question I want you to sit with. What did you love before the world told you what to love? Before you knew which careers paid more? Before you knew what was impressive and what wasn't? Before you understood social hierarchies and prestige and the economics of ambition? When you were a child and you were just following your natural pull, what were you drawn to? What made you lose track of time? What did you do not because you were told to, but because something inside you just wanted to? Because I genuinely believe that those early instincts contain important information about who you are and what you are designed for. And I know that we grow up and things get complicated and the world asks us to be practical. But I also know that a lot of us traded something real for something acceptable. And we've been trying to convince ourselves ever since that it was a good deal. It wasn't. It was the most expensive trade you ever made, and you paid for it with the currency of your authentic self. Let's talk about comparison, because I think this is one of the primary ways that people end up chasing the wrong success. We live in the age of unprecedented visibility into other people's lives. Social media has given everyone a highlight reel and made it accessible 24 hours a day. And the human brain, which was never designed for this kind of constant social comparison, does not do well under these conditions. We see what other people have, and we immediately begin to evaluate ourselves against it. We see someone else's business success and we think we should want that. We see someone else's lifestyle and we think we should build toward that. We see someone else's relationship, someone else's body, someone else's career, and we internalize it as a standard that we need to meet. And what this does systematically and insidiously is it disconnects you from your own internal compass and replaces it with an externally generated checklist. It makes you a consumer of other people's visions for their lives instead of the author of your own. And you end up spending your most valuable years and your most precious energy pursuing a version of success that was never even yours. It was just visible. It was just what was in front of you. It was just what got the most likes. Let me tell you the problem with borrowed dreams. When you borrow someone else's dream, you borrow their path, but not their fuel. You borrow their destination, but not their fire. You can commit to a goal that someone else's passion built and work toward it with great discipline. But at some point, usually when things get really hard, usually when the sacrifice becomes truly costly, usually in the dark season when nothing is working and everything is uncertain, you will discover that you don't have the same reason to keep going that the person who actually owns that dream has. Because they're not doing it for the outcome. They're doing it because it is an expression of who they are. And when you hit that wall, and you will hit that wall, you will have nothing to fall back on but willpower. And willpower is a finite resource. It runs out. It burns out. It is not a substitute for genuine drive that comes from genuine purpose. I want to talk about money for a minute because I think there's a lot of confusion about money and success. Let me be clear. I am not anti-money. I am not standing here telling you that money doesn't matter or that wanting financial security and abundance is somehow shallow or spiritually wrong. Money is a resource. Money creates options. Money provides security. Money allows you to take care of the people you love and contribute to causes that matter to you. Money is a tool, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to be excellent at using that tool. But here is the distinction that I need you to understand. Money is a result. Money is a byproduct. Money is what happens when you deliver enough value to enough people in a sustainable enough way. Money is not a purpose. Money is not a mission. Money is not the answer to the question of what you should do with your one life. And when people make money the primary goal, when the organizing principle of their entire career and professional life is the accumulation of financial wealth, they tend to make decisions that move them away from their purpose, away from their strengths, away from their values, in pursuit of the highest paying opportunity available. And they end up wealthy and hollow. They end up with resources and no meaning. They end up being able to afford anything and unable to feel anything. The research on this is not ambiguous. Study after study has shown that beyond a certain threshold of income, a level that covers genuine security and comfort, additional money does not produce proportional increases in well-being, satisfaction, or happiness. People know this intellectually. They've heard the statistics. They nod along when they encounter this information, and then they continue to structure their entire lives around the pursuit of more money, as if their feelings are somehow exempt from the data, because the cultural messaging is so powerful, because the status signals are so immediate and so visible, because it is much easier to evaluate your success by the number in your account than to do the harder, deeper, more courageous work of asking what you actually came here to do. Now let me speak to some of you who are in a specific kind of pain right now. Some of you are not just chasing the wrong success, you have already caught it. You are already living the life you were supposed to want. You have the job, the income, the title, the relationship, the house, all of it. And you feel nothing, or worse than nothing. You feel a specific kind of grief that is very hard to explain to other people because from the outside, your life looks like evidence that the system works. You are the success story. You are the proof that hard work pays off. And you cannot tell anyone how empty you feel because they will think you're ungrateful or crazy or spoiled. You cannot complain about your successful life. And so you keep performing it. You keep posting about it. You keep telling the story of your success while privately wondering when you're going to start feeling the way you thought you would feel when you got here. I see you. I know you're out there. And I want you to know that what you are experiencing is not a character flaw. It is not ingratitude. It is not a mental health problem. It is the natural and inevitable consequence of achieving someone else's definition of success. It is the tax you pay for outsourcing your vision. And the good news, the genuinely good news, is that you are not trapped there. You have not wasted your life. You have simply been on the wrong road. And the moment you acknowledge that is the moment you can begin navigating toward the right one. Because here's the truth that I want to etch into your understanding so deeply that you cannot forget it, even when the world tries to pull you back into its approved definitions of achievement. It is never too late to choose yourself. It is never too late to ask the real question. It is never too late to change direction. People have pivoted in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, and built lives of profound meaning and contribution. The idea that there is a deadline for becoming who you were supposed to be is a lie designed to keep you manageable, to keep you in the lane that serves other people's interests and not your own. Your life is not a story with a fixed plot. It is a living, breathing, evolving thing, and every day you wake up is a day you can write a sentence that is closer to the truth of who you are. I want to talk about what it actually costs to chase the wrong success, because I don't think we name this enough. We talk about the potential rewards of risk and authenticity, but we don't always count the true cost of playing it safe and staying in the wrong lane. The cost is not just satisfaction. It is so much larger than that. The cost is your children watching you perform a life you don't believe in and learning from that performance that this is what adulthood means. The cost is the relationships you don't fully invest in because you're pouring all your energy into work that doesn't fuel you, leaving you with nothing left for the people who matter most. The cost is the health consequences of chronic stress and low-level misery that accumulates over years of doing work that does not align with your values. The cost is the gradual erosion of your sense of self, the slow forgetting of who you are and what you care about and what made you feel alive. As you adapt yourself to fit a role that was never designed to hold all of you, these are not small costs. These are the costs of a life not fully lived, and they compound over time the same way interest compounds in a bank account, except what you're accumulating is not wealth, it is regret. Regret. Let's talk about regret, because I think it is one of the most underused motivators in the human emotional toolkit. People spend a lot of time trying to avoid failure and embarrassment and loss, which are immediate, visible, socially apparent consequences. But they spend far less time trying to avoid regret, which is the long-term consequence of consistently making choices that betray your own values and suppress your own potential. And here's the asymmetry that behavioral research consistently reveals. People regret the things they didn't do far more than the things they did. They regret the chances they didn't take. They regret the version of themselves they never became. They regret the relationships they didn't pursue, the businesses they didn't start, the conversations they didn't have, the pivots they were too afraid to make. The failure that happens when you try is survivable and often educational. The failure that happens when you never try at all, that is the kind that sits with you forever. That is the kind that visits you in quiet moments and asks you what you were so afraid of. And most of the time, when you're honest with yourself, what you were afraid of was other people's opinions. Which is perhaps the most expensive currency we spend on the absolutely most perishable thing in the world. What other people think of you will change. It will change constantly. The same people who criticize your unconventional choices today will applaud your success tomorrow if the results are visible enough. The same people who called you foolish for leaving the stable job will call you inspiring when your passion project becomes profitable. The same people who thought your dream was unrealistic will suddenly remember that they always believed in you when you achieve it. Opinion is cheap. Opinion is temporary. Opinion is a weather system, unpredictable, always changing, and completely outside your control. You cannot build a life of genuine meaning on the foundation of other people's approval. That foundation is sand. Everything you build on it is at constant risk of collapse the moment the opinion shifts. The only foundation that holds is your own clarity about who you are, what you value, and what contribution you came here to make. Let me give you a framework for thinking about this differently. Instead of asking what success looks like, start asking what a meaningful life feels like. Instead of asking what you want to achieve, start asking who you want to become. Instead of asking how much you want to make, start asking how much impact you want to have. These are not soft, feel-good questions. These are the most strategically important questions you can ask yourself because they will organize your decisions around principles that are actually sustainable. Achievement without meaning creates emptiness. Acquisition without purpose creates anxiety. Status without contribution creates a specific kind of loneliness that no social media following can fill. But when your work is connected to your values, when your daily actions are moving you toward a version of yourself you genuinely respect, when what you build serves others in ways that matter, you have something that external success cannot provide and external failure cannot take away. You have integrity, not moral integrity, though that matters too. I mean the architectural kind, the kind where all the parts of your life are in alignment, where what you believe, what you say, what you do, and who you are all point in the same direction. That is the most powerful state a human being can inhabit, and is available to every single person in this room, regardless of your history, regardless of your resources, regardless of what you've been told about what is and is impossible for someone like you. Someone like you. Let me sit with that phrase for a moment because I think it's doing a lot of damage. The idea that there is a category called someone like you with defined limits and prescribed destinations is one of the most limiting stories that gets imposed on people, often from a very young age, often by people who genuinely thought they were being helpful or realistic. Maybe you were told that college wasn't for people from your neighborhood. Maybe you were told that certain kinds of ambition were for other kinds of people. Maybe you were told, directly or indirectly, through the messages that your environment sent you every single day, that your ceiling was lower than the average person's floor. And if you heard those messages long enough and consistently enough, you internalized them. You started to police your own dreams. You started to self-censor your own ambition. You started chasing the biggest success available within the category of what was acceptable for someone like you, which is a fundamentally different and fundamentally smaller target than the success you were actually capable of. And I want to address this not just with inspiration, but with honesty, because the barriers that were placed in front of you are real, the systemic inequities are real, the head starts that some people have are real. I am not standing here and pretending that everyone begins from the same place or that passion and purpose automatically overcome structural disadvantage. They don't always. The world is not always fair, and outcomes are not always proportional to effort and talent. But what I am saying, and I want to be precise about this, is that even within systems that are unjust, even in environments that present real and significant obstacles, the decision about what you are aiming for is still yours. And too many people, in response to real and legitimate barriers, give up not just on the path, but on the destination. They don't just modify their route, they lower their target. They don't just adapt their strategy, they abandon their dream. And that is the one concession that I would not encourage you to make. You can adapt, you can be strategic, you can be patient, you can build your resources incrementally. You can find mentors who have navigated similar terrain. You can be realistic about timelines without being realistic about ceilings. You can acknowledge the obstacles without letting them define the destination. Because the world needs what you have. I mean that specifically and not as a generic motivational statement. I mean that the specific combination of experiences, perspectives, instincts, passions, and gifts that you carry, the particular lens through which you see the world, is not replicated anywhere else on earth. There has never been another you, and there will never be another you. And when you shrink yourself to fit into a definition of success that was not designed with you in mind, when you suppress what is unique about you to perform a version of achievement that the world already has plenty of, you are depriving the world of something it only gets once. You are the only person who can do what you are here to do in exactly the way that you can do it. That is not arrogance, that is stewardship. Recognizing your gifts and refusing to bury them is not ego, it is responsibility. Let me talk about the work that comes after the realization. Because at some point in a speech like this, there's a moment where the energy is high and the vision feels clear and the decision feels made. And then you go home and you wake up the next morning and the job is still the same job. And the bills are still there. Ooh. And the people around you are still operating by the old rules. And the momentum of your existing life is still pulling you in the direction you've already been going. And the inspiration fades, as it always does. And what you're left with is just you and the same choices you've always had. Except now you've had this moment of clarity, and you have to decide what to do with it. So let me tell you what to do with it. Write it down. Right now, before the feeling fades, write down the thing you know. Write down the thing you've been avoiding. Write down the version of success that you actually want, not the version you've been performing. Because clarity that doesn't make contact with paper and doesn't translate into action is just mood. And mood is temporary. But decisions that get documented become anchored that you can return to when the noise gets loud again. Then start asking better questions. Not how do I quit my job and follow my passion? That's too big, too abrupt, too much for most people's circumstances. Ask instead, what is one step I can take this week that moves me closer to alignment? What is one thing I can start doing, even in a small way, even in whatever margin of time and energy I have, that connects me to the work I was made to do? What is one relationship I can build that puts me closer to the people who are already doing what I want to do? What is one thing I can stop doing that is consuming resources, time, energy, attention that would be better invested in my real direction? Small moves made consistently and intentionally over months and years produce transformations that look sudden from the outside, but were built brick by brick from the inside. No one sees the years of small daily choices that precede the overnight success. They only see the success. But every success is built the same way, not with one heroic leap, but with thousands of small, deliberate decisions to keep moving toward what matters. And I want to talk about patience because I think one of the reasons people give up on their real purpose and default back to the conventional definition of success is that the conventional path has clearer, faster, more visible milestones. You get the degree, you get the job, you get the raise. There's a structure, a ladder, a series of legible achievements that let you and everyone around you track your progress. But when you're building toward your own vision, when you're creating something original or pursuing a path that doesn't have an established track, the feedback can be slower and less clear. You will work for months and sometimes years without the kind of external validation that tells you you're on the right path. And that ambiguity is hard. That silence is hard. That period of building in the dark, not knowing if the thing you believe in is actually going to come together. That is the test that most people fail. Not because they lack talent, not because they lack work ethic, but because they haven't built a relationship with delayed gratification that's strong enough to survive the gap between starting and succeeding. That gap between when you commit to your real path and when that path starts producing visible results. That gap will test everything you think you know about yourself. It will test your belief. It will test your patience. It will test your willingness to keep going without the approval of the people around you. It will test your ability to sit with uncertainty and keep working anyway. And the people who make it through that gap are not the most talented and not the most fortunate. They are the most committed. They are most committed. They are the people who connected their daily actions to a why that was bigger and deeper and more personal than any external reward. They are the people who found a way to get something sustaining from the work itself, not just from its outcomes. And that capacity, the capacity to do the work because the work matters to you, independent of whether the world has validated it yet, is perhaps the most important capability you can develop. Let me also address the people who are reading this and thinking, I've already made my choice. I've already been on this wrong path for a decade. I have a mortgage, I have a career, I have a reputation built around this identity. I've gone too far down this road to turn around. And I want to be very direct with you. That belief is not wisdom. That belief is a cognitive bias called the sunk cost fallacy. The sunk cost fallacy is the tendency to keep investing in something just because you've already invested so much, even when the evidence clearly indicates that it is not serving you. You don't keep pouring water into a leaking bucket because you've already been pouring for an hour. You fix the bucket. The decade you spent on the wrong path is not a reason to spend the next decade there too. It is a reason to be more intentional about how you spend the next decade. The question is never whether you can afford to change. The question is whether you can afford not to. And I know this is hard. I know the courage this requires. I know the conversations you'd have to have, the uncertainty you'd have to sit with, the judgment you face from people who don't understand why you're walking away from the thing that looks like success. I know the financial risk. I know the professional risk. I know the professional risk. I know the relational risk. I am not minimizing any of that. I am simply asking you to weigh it against the cost of remaining exactly where you are for another 10 years. I am asking you to be honest about what you are protecting by staying still. And I am asking you whether the version of security you are preserving is actually secure or whether it is just familiar, because familiar and safe are not the same thing. Staying in a life that is slowly draining your vitality and suppressing your potential is not safe. It is a different kind of risk. It is the risk of arriving at the end of your life and realizing that you were too afraid to live it. And that is the one risk that offers no recovery. Let me close with this. Success is not a destination. It is not a number. It is not a title or an address or following net worth. Success, real success, the kind that holds up over time and feels like something when you're alone with yourself at the end of the day. That is what happens when your life is an expression of who you actually are. It is what happens when the work you do is connected to the gifts you carry and the values you hold. It is what happens when you stop performing a life for other people's approval and start building one for your own meaning. It is what happens when you are brave enough to want what you actually want instead of what you've been told to want. It is what happens when you look at your one wild, irreplaceable, unrepeatable life and you decide that you are going to spend it in pursuit of something that is genuinely, authentically, deeply yours. The world will give you 1,000 reasons to keep chasing the wrong success. It will reward you for it, at least for a while. It will praise you and promote you and validate you. And then one day, if you're lucky, something will crack open. A quiet moment, a crisis, a loss, a conversation, a speech, a late night realization. And you will see clearly, maybe for the first time in a long time, that you have been running the wrong race. And in that moment, you will have a choice. You can take a deep breath and change direction, or you can tighten your shoes and keep running. I am asking you, I am begging you to choose the change. Not because it is easy, not because it is without risk, but because you are too important, too specific, too irreplaceable to spend any more of your precious and finite life building someone else's dream. Stop chasing the wrong success. Start building your real life. The world has been waiting for the genuine, unedited, fully alive version of you. And I promise, I absolutely promise, it will be worth it.